Still on backstage.
Okay, it's a solo thing. I said we. I won't make any assumptions about other people's excitement. I think everyone's excited. This distinguished panel that we are bringing before you tonight, but we are about to go live. I am going to pause. I am going to come on. If you're already on, if you will, please tag some folks, invite them to come on. Start a watch party. Do they still do watch parties on Facebook? Can you still do watch parties? I thought they were cutting watch parties out. You can't. Pastor Yolanda says you can no longer do watch parties. So, but enjoy this video. You all have seen this video before. It won't be anything new to you. I call it my Ignite theme song, and we're going to play just a little bit of it, and then we are going to come back. So Bill, invite some folks to come on. This is going to be an amazing conversation. We're talking tonight, coming back to continue the conversation about my list. And I want to be very clear. This is my list. This is not an objective, comprehensive, expert list. This is just my list of what I call the top 12 biblical rules of relationships. And we had so much fun last Wednesday. We're going to pick up where we left off. We were talking about what I consider rule number 1, which is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor. And then, in quoting from Jesus, love your neighbor as yourself. And we have a special guest on tonight that I will talk about in just a second. But let me take a moment, play a little bit of this video, and give you all time to invite some folks to come on.
I remember moving with your direction, following with intention, deliberate in all your ways. I recall looking for confirmation through prayer and meditation, seeking to find your face. I'm totally free. Yeah, 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 yeah. Free indeed. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, yeah. No more chains holding me. Yeah, 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 yeah. Wanna sing hallelujah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm totally remember waiting for man's opinion, dealing with their dominion, hoping they'd show me the way. I recall looking for confirmation through prayer and meditation, desperately seeking your face. Now I'm totally free. Yeah, 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 yeah. Free indeed. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, yeah. No more chains holding me. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, yeah. Wanna sing hallelujah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm totally free.
All right, we're back. We're back. Well, welcome again. It is May 12th. It is 11 days after my birthday. I don't know why that's important to say, but I just felt inspired to let everybody know it's 11 days after my birthday. I think you can actually, I think it's legal to actually be able to give gifts up to 12 days. So you still have one more day. You can send a gift. You can send it to St. Mark if it's something tangible. If it's like a big gift, you can just have it UPS to St. Mark. Or if you want to cash out me, you can find me on, but good evening. Good evening. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is going to be an amazing conversation. I am convinced today, this day, I am more convinced than ever that we've got to get better at relationships. I see it on the global level. I see it in our country right now. I see it in communities. I see it in churches. I see it in families that and I don't want to be a negative, a bad mouther, but I think we struggle with healthy relationships. We don't know how to build healthy relationships. We don't know how to relate to each other in a healthy way. So it's been a month now, I think, that we started this journey on talking about relationships called People Stuff. Relationships on a Jesus tip. We are focusing on what Jesus had to say about relationships. But tonight, and we're preaching that on Sundays, but last week and then tonight, we're talking about, I'm giving my list of the top 12 rules. Those of you that know me know that what I do, this happens over and over again. I'll come up to preach or teach, and I'll have 35,000 points, and we'll cover 3. And which people are asking, why in the world would he create a list of 35,000 sermon points, and then spend the entire time on the first point, and then say, I wish I had more time, and I wish I had 5 Pentecostals who would say amen, even though I just made a mess of a sermon. So I am just delighted that we are here, and I want to bring on the panelists for tonight, just some amazing people, and I'm excited about them coming on. Let me bring on my young adults first. Samaria!
Hello.
Good evening. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming on. Quante Robinson, who was not on with us, but is with us this week, another young adult from St. Mark. And then, of course, my good friend, our co-host, my good friend, partner in ministry, Pastor Yolanda Oliver. Y'all say hello to Pastor Oliver.
Good evening.
Pastor Oliver is a great preacher and teacher in her own right, but on Wednesday nights and pretty much at St. Mark, what she does is she interprets me for people. So I say stuff, it doesn't make sense. And then Pastor Yolanda comes back, she says, restates it, and people go, wow, that was really brilliant. But it really was just, so that's what she does. It's a joy to have her on tonight.
So
and then our other co-host, and our good friend who's not in Wichita, by the way, he's in Austin, Texas. He's a minister. He's a tech whiz. He is a creative genius, and we're delighted to have him on. I'm just honored that he would spend Wednesday nights with me, because I know he's got so many other things to do, and that's Kai Green. And then my good friend that I met at Windsor, who also worked with me at New World Church in Houston. She is one of the most creative people that I know. She lives on the edge and does so courageously. Tracy J, the quiet rebel. And I'll say more about Tracy J as we go along, because Tracy and I and one of our panelists that I will introduce in just a second, we're doing a conversation together on May 16th called 100 Voices, a conversation on race and culture. And although it's primarily between St. Mark and a Jewish congregation in Houston that we'll tell you more about, we are inviting others, anybody who wants to participate, and we'll put that link up. So if you want to participate, you'll be able to do so. But welcome, TJ. Thank you for coming on. And then my friend, my brilliant friend, musicologist, cultural anthropologist, Dr. Shauna Masheko is back with us. Thank you, Shauna, for coming on. And then our special guest tonight. So we ended up last week talking about what is called in Hebrew, and I think I'm pronouncing this right, the Shema. And it is I will say more about it, but so part of our conversation is happening on 16. I have the pleasure of meeting Rabbi Scott Hausman Weiss, and he is on with us tonight, and I'm so delighted to have him. And we brought him on because the rule that we talked about last week. When I met him, I invited him to come on and we're going to give him about 7 to 10 minutes just to teach on that out of his faith tradition and out of the Torah, and then we're going to invite the panelists to give feedback to that. So welcome all of you. Thank you, panelists, for coming on. So as you all can see, I like to dig into the word. I like to dig into the scripture. I also like to dig deep into issues but I also like to have fun, because I think if you're not having fun, it's hard to learn. It's hard to grow. It's hard to embrace especially hard truth, unless you're having fun. So folks, reach out, tag some folks, invite them to come on as we dig into these rules of relationship taken from scripture, and with our special guests and panelists tonight. So Rabbi Scott, welcome to Ignite. Thank you for coming on, sir. Do you have any opening? Just want to greet folks?
Oh, thank you, Robert. It is a pleasure to be here. Here from Houston, Texas, and I'm so looking forward to this program that we're going to be doing this Sunday, 3:00. So grateful to Tracy for organizing it and for planning it and for working with us. I think it's going to be a terrific experience. So thank you, and I'm just honored to be here tonight with y'all.
It's an honor to have you. And Tracy, will you say a little about the event and tell folks more about it? And then as you're doing that, Yolanda, I posted under the banners. Well, we'll put the banner up and then folks can copy it. We'll also post it on Facebook. And so folks can go and find the link and you can go and sign up to participate. But Tracy, TJ, Quiet Rebel, you want to say more about it?
So sure. So 100 Voices is an opportunity to share space with other humans and hear their lived experience through their lens. It's an opportunity for us to step outside of the silos and the bubbles that we normally have these conversations, and to hear about somebody else's life from their own lips, and to observe one another's humanity.
Awesome. And so this is happening between St. Mark United Methodist Church and
Congregation Shema Kolenu.
Outstanding.
And their families and friends.
And their families and friends, because I've invited all my Kifa friends, Kansas Interfaith Action. We've sent it out to them. We're inviting my friends here in Wichita and other places to come on, those who want to participate. We like to have 100 people engaged. So part of the experience is that we break off. It's on Zoom. You break off into groups and everyone has a chance to engage, and is learning to share one's humanity as well as learning to listen as others share their humanity, which for me is a core value. I believe that that's part of what it means to be human and part of what it means to live into our full humanity. So with that, we'll say more about that later. I want to go now to Rabbi Scott, and let's get our conversation started. And if you will talk about the Shema and just spend 5 to 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes, just kind of teaching on that and sharing with that. And then panelists, you guys take notes and be prepared to give him your feedback.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. What a privilege it is to have this time to share this with you. So first of all, Pastor Johnson, congratulations. Shema is correct, and it is pronounced the Shema, and it is pronounced very, very, very good, very good. And it's called the Torah. That's right as well. Let me start here. So the name of my congregation is Shema Kolenu. So some people call the Shema, they call it the Shema, but it really comes from the Hebrew word Shema, which means listen, hear. So it begins with the words, this is, by the way, from the book of Deuteronomy. It's in book of Deuteronomy chapter 6. And I don't know if you know this, but every Torah, every scroll that's written in the Jewish tradition, it's written in the original Hebrew, and it's written by hand. It's written by somebody called a sofer, or a scribe. So every Torah that's been written over the past really 2,000 years is written by hand And so there's certain differences in the ways certain words and letters are written that gets passed down. So the phrase Shema, which is the first word of listen or hear, it's the Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So that's the translation of those words. But what's interesting to begin with is that the final letter of the word Shema is a letter called an ayin. And the final letter of the word echad, which means one, which is at the end of the prayer, is a daled, and it's written very larger than the other letters. So the ayin and the daled, the third letter, the last letter of the first word and the last letter of the sixth word are written larger. And there isn't, the Torah doesn't come with an instruction booklet. It doesn't say this is the reason why it's done, which gives rabbis an opportunity to just, provide all sorts of interpretation, because there's nobody else who's going to say, we figure when we finally someday get to study with the prophet Elijah in the heavens, we're going to learn then. Then we'll learn what the truth is. But up until then, we get to riff on it. So what we know about these two letters, the ayin and the daled, is they make a Hebrew word, which is the word aid. And aid is the Hebrew word for witness. So there's something very powerful about this idea that when we say these words, listen, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. It's an act of witness. It's an act of witnessing a truth that we discern from both the Torah, from the tradition, and I believe from our lived experience, which is the tradition teaching us, listen up, pay attention. There is only a oneness in the world of which we are all a part. Right, so it's not this simple way of understanding it of there's only one God, and if you don't believe in this God, then you're wrong. It's not that. It's that if you pay attention, if you breathe into any particular moment, if you allow yourself to be present and feel a sense of presence in this moment, then what we discover is that we, all of us, are part of that original oneness. And that even though we live our lives as distinct, unique individuals, that is true at the same time as we are, each of us, a unique reflection of that oneness of God. And so that, to a great extent, there's this central concept of oneness. So I love teaching Judaism to Jewish people, but I also love teaching Judaism to people who aren't Jews, not because I think that we're more right than anybody else, but because I believe that you and we are all part of that oneness. And that's what those words, I think that's what those words mean to me, certainly. But the Shema doesn't end with just that first line, because then what follows is what's called the Ve'ahavta, which is and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your might. And I believe the Ve'ahavta, for me, the most important way of understanding the Ve'ahavta is that it feels like it's broken down into three parts, or can be broken down into three parts. The first is that statement, right? It's a command. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And what I call that first section the what section. Now, there's a famous Jewish philosopher named Maimonides who wrote and studied and taught in the Middle Ages. And he asked the question, can you indeed command love? And on some level, the argument is, no, it's an emotional thing. But what his argument was that you can't necessarily command falling in love. But there's so much more loving that's necessary if you're going to stay in that love. And so it begins with this idea of, here's the what. you want to be a good human being, you want to live a good life, the first is to know that you have to love God with all your heart and your soul and your might. And I extend that to be love yourself, love others, love all other human beings, right? That's the what. Okay, so we say, I love them. I love God. But that's just the first step. The second step of the hafta is then the how, right? It's the put your money where your mouth is part. It's the, here's how you're going to do it, right? You're going to teach your children. You're going to live with these words on your lips when you're at home and when you're in the marketplace. You're going to enact and bring to life these lessons with your hands and with your eyes, right? You're going to notice that these lessons are meant to be taught and lived, more importantly, everywhere and in all places, especially when it may feel inconvenient, right? So this is then goes into the how. So we have the what, you shall love God, and then the how, because it's not enough to just say, I love something. You got to actually do it. You got to actually show that you really mean it. And then this is my favorite part, because then we get to the why. And the why part begins with these words in Hebrew. L'ma'an tizkiru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai. God says, this is so you will remember that you were once slaves in the land of Egypt. So this is God reminding the Jewish people in this case, but I think all human beings, that all of us must remember ourselves as having come forth out of the land of Egypt. As a matter of fact, on Passover, that's what we're commanded to do. Every human being must see himself or herself as if he or she came forth out of the land of Egypt. But the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim. And the root of that word Mitzrayim is tsar, which means narrow. So it's not just about a historical notion of slavery. It's also about a spiritual one. It's about something that we as human beings do and struggle through potentially each and every day. Right? The coming forth out of the narrownesses of life, narrownesses of mind, of vision, of narrownesses of what we feel, of how we act, of how we react. So the idea is, first there's the what? Love God. That's at the center. The second is, it's not just enough to say you love God. It's not just enough even to pray about loving God. You actually have to live it out. And then finally, the third part is the why. If you don't, this is my favorite part. If you don't, then you will find yourself back in Egypt. You will find yourself back in Mitzrayim, in the narrow places. Because to not enact that love of God, which is all about being open to the world around you, being open to the possibilities of all that is before you. If you are so closed off, then you're not living a life of loving God. And then as a result, you'll find yourself in those narrow places. And so hate and violence, prejudice, oppression, these are all the result of not loving God. And, I could go on, but this is one of the ways in which I think the Shema and the Vehafta, which, by the way, are the two prayers that are found in what's called the mezuzah. Mezuzah, you may be familiar with a mezuzah. It's literally the sign that you put on the doorposts of one's home if you're Jewish. Inside of that piece of sometimes ceramic, sometimes it's wood. Inside of it is a handwritten parchment with these words, the Shema and the Vehafta. So they are central to Jewish life and Jewish living, and I believe they're central to what it means to be human beings.
You're muted, Robert. Robert, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? That was amazing. before we get our feedback, would you do me a favor? Can you read the passage for us in Hebrew?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You know what? How about I chant it for you? 'Cause
Oh,
that's the way
that's even better. Yes, please. Yes.
that's the way we pray it, in synagogue. So the first part is more what I'd call sing-songy. It's more of a melody, and then this, which is just the Shema, and then there's actually a second line to it, and then the V'ahavta is actually done in the chanting that maybe you've heard before. It's the chanting from the Torah. So it goes like this. It goes Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. And then the next part goes like this. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam leot al yadecha ve'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam hamazazot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. Can't hear you, Rob.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. That was amazing. I just feel like we need to pause and honor that before we start talking again. Thank you so much. Wow.
You're welcome.
Wow. All right. Let's breathe. Just want to inhale that in. That was absolutely awesome. So I just want to hear feedback. I'm going to hush, and I just want to see if the panelists want to. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? That was a great teaching, so in depth. So I love the concept of the narrowness. First of all, I like the concept of a broader interpretation. The Lord our God is one. This oneness, and I know Dr. Shauna has been digging into that concept anthropologically, by the way, that this oneness out of which we come, we all come, and we have our individuality, but we come from this oneness, and in connecting to that oneness and being made whole is how we're able to live fully human lives. But then the concept of Egypt and the way you connected that to narrowness, and that if we don't engage in this holistic love, that we can be returned to these narrow places. Oh my God, that's so good. So jump in. Dr. Shauna, you want to jump in?
Wow, I am so blessed. Thank you so much, Rabbi. It's just so beautiful. And I think the beauty that that you just expressed to us is exactly what I've been studying, Pastor Johnson. And it's the idea that I work a lot with groups who are trying to figure out ways to have difficult conversations about race. And I work with people who are learning about their history as African Americans. And what I've come to understand is that it's so much easier to communicate difficult concepts about where we are now if we can go all the way back to our origins as one human family, and then describe the original intent of our humanity. And that description, once you study it from an anthropological standpoint, not even thinking about it from a spiritual lens, but the goal was that inside of community, inside of connection and community, that's how we kept one another alive and thriving from our very, very beginnings. And just as you explained earlier, it wasn't until hatred and greed and all of these other issues where these concepts of one being more worthy than the other were pulled into the mix that we completely lost sight of our united humanity. And so it's just amazing to me that every single religion you study, pretty much, every single religion you study pulls you back to the concept of love for one another and acting out that love. And that is the ultimate goal for humans, for our humanity. So I just think it's just so beautiful. And it's directly related to this concept of living a full, revitalized, thriving life. It's when we're able to understand that we are all connected. I mean, really, we are all really connected physically. And when we understand that and we walk in love and we act in love, then there's just absolutely no limit to the amount of things we can do together when we're united in love. So thank you so much for that.
That was a brilliant response. And so I just want to touch base, and then next, just real quick. And the opposite of that then is to live in this narrowness. So I just want to come back to that. The opposite of what Rabbi and Dr. Shauna have just described, the opposite of that is to live in this narrowness. And if not looking at others, if we look at ourselves, when we're in those places where we're struggling to love, we're struggling to be affirming of others, we're struggling to, that it is a kind of narrowness. It's almost as a kind of squeezing of one's life so that the good things are being squeezed out and you're being left in this narrow place of negative emotions and bitter. We're going to come back and ask Rabbi to say more about that narrowness, but let me let the rest of you all give some feedback on his.
A couple of things struck me. The one is not the irony, but the connectedness that the Shema means to listen. And that is like the primary focus of 100 Voices is listening. And
Wow.
So I'm feeling all manner of thing about that right now. The other thing is that as I was listening to Rabbi chant, and it's not that I've never heard chanting or Hebrew chanted before, but tonight hearing it reminded me very much of other native tongues. And it sounded very much like listening to tribal chants. You know, all of us being sort of foreigners on American soil, and sort of feeling the energetic connection of Native American chants in this moment is what is sort of settling in my body right now.
I love it. I love it. I am not going to give a commentary on everything, but can I take a solo right here real quick? Just can I get a Giselle, if Giselle is watching, she's dying laughing right now. That comes from the movie about the guy who wants to be a rock good player, and he uses these kids for that. And he says, "Can I take a solo right there?" But Tracy, that piece about listening, you brought me to tears because, and Yolanda and I have talked about this. Someone, I can't remember who, this is a quote from some psychoanalyst who says that being listened to feels so much like love that most people can't tell the difference. And then someone else says that the first step to love is to listen. And that's why it's good to have conversations, because I grasped what he said about listening, but I was missing that the beginning of this relationship, this community that God is building is listening. We'll come back to that. All right. Bless us, bro.
Yeah. I am such a crybaby, but I was actually, before we came on, you know, I finished just a challenging, I would say, series of conversations, and I was sharing that with Tracy J behind, and I was saying to myself, you know, let me kind of get myself together, and I got to tell you, that chanting took me somewhere, and it reminded me growing up in our little AME church when my great uncle would get down. You know, I love the Lord, but you would hear this singing, but it came from a different place, right? And its ability to transport you into a different mindset. And my eyes are watering right now. Sometimes we don't even know the trauma that we're carrying. And to have a moment where something can pull you back in to who you really are. I'm blown away by how the simplicity of Christ's word has the ability to truly tear down strongholds that we don't even know are in front of us in a moment. Getting it together. Point number 2, he made a point about, man, God is so kind to us. He made a point about he was talking about the Torah and how things were written by hand and how things could be different. And there wasn't this exact clear translation. And he said, we get to kind of riff on that a little bit. And when I think about the scriptures that he was talking about, I'm just blown away that God loves us enough that he leaves us room to improvise. And so what I mean by that is that he tells us to love one another, you know, love him, love yourself, love one another. And as the rabbi said, he said, when we don't do that, we find ourselves in these narrow places. And when you improvise, it means you use the best of what's around you to create something that is more. So that when we love Christ, when we love God, we love our neighbors, we widen what's available to us. We're not in the narrow place. So we widen ourselves around the sounds that we can make to praise God. We widen ourselves to the interpretations that we understand about the revelation of Christ. We widen ourselves to the blessings of having more brothers and sisters in our life. We widen ourselves to the cultural experience of unity. And through all these avenues, we truly widen ourselves to the full expression of Christ. So he made those incredible points, and I'm probably done for tonight because I'm just full. And I just want to say thank you. And I want to say thank God for loving us enough to send us what we need when we don't even know that we need it. Yeah.
We love you.
Yes, yes, yes. Quante and Samari, I don't know, Pastor Yolanda, you all have any comments? And then I want to ask Rabbi if he'll comment more. Can he push us deeper on the concept of narrowness? And then I want to take a turn, pivot from that and talk about, so one of my top 12 is forgiveness. is to talk about how forgiveness takes us to a place of narrowness. So, but let me see if Pastor Yolanda, Quante, and Samari want to come in here at all. I see Samari sucking it in. She's just in hell. I see it. Yeah.
Want to segue from what Kai said, that's where the command actually comes into play, because you have that experience like what you just had, and the worship actually becomes the command. So you get to choose to have that love and that oneness and that connectionalism because of what he imparted in us before we ever breathed our first breath. So it's already in us. We just have to get to the choice of the command. And then I'll be quiet.
Good stuff, Pastor. Good stuff.
Samaria, Quante?
I was just going to say that everyone hit it on the head with what they're talking about. I find it interesting that there's so many different religions, but at the end of the day, we kind of all have the same core concepts: loving yourself, loving your neighbor, loving God. And it, like you said, it brings us all back together in the end.
I want to ask Quante and Samari just real quick, as we go back to this narrowness, does that concept, I mean, we're at a theological level with it right now, and we're going to push into the anthropological, human, experiential idea of it. But does that resonate? Does that resonate with you at all, Quante? Like if someone would ask you, what does it feel like for life to feel narrow? No? Okay.
He's having some connectivity issues.
He's having some connectivity.
Yeah. But isolation comes to mind.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about by proximity, but I'm saying isolated from my own thoughts, from my own emotion, because I'm so busy to where I don't have the opportunity to have that centeredness to be connected.
Yes. Yes. I think about, Pastor, the Garden of Eden, after they partake of the fruits and then they begin to hide, they come into this flourishing garden with almost unrestricted life. And then that happens, and then they take themselves into this place of narrowness. So I think about it in that brings that concept out for me. But I like your word alienation, because that points us toward relationship, right? So that when we're alienated, that means we're not engaged with others in a way that's life producing. So we're in a place of narrowness. But Rabbi, we'll come back to you. Can everyone mute while he's talking? We're getting some feedback from someone.
So first of all, this is so much fun. Just thank you. And I am so moved, Kai. I was sitting here thinking to myself, where are my congregants so they can see the impact I can have sometimes? I'm sorry. What really strikes me about what y'all are saying raises for me something that I think is so critical to Jewish theology and Jewish philosophy, which is this notion that you can't ever know what's good without having experienced what's bad, right? You can't ever know what light is if you don't have a sense or haven't lived in the darkness. And there is this constant required duality that we have to live in and have to experience in order to be fully human. One of my favorite metaphors for creation is the idea that, God is this pure light that shines forth. And then in the process of creation, the light goes through a prism. And then on the other side is this complete, endless, infinite potential spectrum of colors that creates this, the distinctions in life without which there is no life, like without which there is no sense of uniqueness, right? You can't have union without distinction, right? You don't know what it is if you haven't experienced the separateness, and yet there's and it's not that there's necessarily no value in the darkness or no value in the distinction and separation. So this idea that I always try to keep it in mind, the idea that the light is this, comes through the prism, and then on the other side is our distinctiveness. And the job of a human being is to live out the beauty of our distinctiveness without forgetting that we're actually part, all of us, of that original unity, right? And so it's a both and. Y'all are probably familiar with the Jacob and Esau story, right? So Isaac and Rebekah's children, right? And so the story from the birth, right? The Hebrew says, in the English it says, and the boys were wrestling. It says, Vayit rotzitzu habanim. The boys were wrestling in Rebekah's womb. Right? From the very beginning, they were wrestling, they were struggling, they were fighting with each other. And then in the birth, right, Esau, who's given a name that describes his sort of physical appearance, right? He comes out, he's ruddy in nature, and he's named Esau. And then Jacob, right, he's born, and what does the tradition teach? That he was holding the heel of his brother Esau. And why? Well, metaphorically, allegorically, the idea is he was maybe trying to pull Esau back, right, so that he could have been born first. And his name is Yaakov, Jacob, Yaakov. And the Hebrew root of the word Yaakov is ekev, which means heel. So the idea is Esau is rather simple, it would seem. He's just described by his sort of ruddy nature. But Jacob is described by being a heel grabber, which isn't a term we necessarily use normally, but it describes a sense of what it means, being human. Sometimes we struggle and we are behind people and we want to get ahead, and we might do anything we feel like we need to do in order to get ahead, including pull them back, right, so that we can get ahead of them. But what's amazing is then fast forward, right? Jacob then steals the blessing and he runs away, and Esau threatens to kill him and all that. And he runs away, and Jacob runs away, and he, of course, he falls in love with Rachel. He gets tricked. He marries Leah. Then he marries Rachel. We know all that stuff. And then they finally leave his uncle Laban's home. And then just as he's leaving, what does he learn? Oh, my brother Esau is heading this direction. 20 years later, right? Jacob is, he just doesn't know what to do with himself. I mean, he is scared. He is frightened. He's like, all right, this half of the family, you go this direction. This half of the family, you go this direction. I'm going to stay here, and he's just trying to figure it out. And then he sleeps, right? He goes to sleep, and then we know about the dream. And the dream says, or we don't know it's a dream, but at night he beds down at the river called Yabok, which is a play on Yaakov. It's the same words, Pastor Johnson, right? Remember the Hebrew, Yaakov, Yabok, right? So he's with himself is the idea, and he's wrestling with a man. Torah doesn't say who it is, but they wrestle and they wrestle, and finally the man says to Yaakov, hey, let me go. And Jacob says, I won't let you go until you bless me. Right? And as a reader, think, well, wait a minute, he got a blessing. Right? But maybe a stolen blessing isn't really a blessing. So then he says to him, he says, I won't let you go until you bless me. And the angel, the man, whatever it is, says to him, from this day forward, you are no longer Yaakov, heel grabber. You are Yisrael, the one who wrestles with God. The one who wrestles with life, the one who wrestles, right? But here's what's so cool about this. So he gets the name Yisrael, but he's not. The Torah doesn't call him Yisrael from that time forward. Sometimes he's called Israel, and sometimes he's called Yaakov. And in the prophets and in the writings, the people of Israel, sometimes we're called the people of Israel, Yisrael, and sometimes we're called the people of Jacob. For me, this is this transitionary nature of we don't ever just arrive and then we're done. As human beings, we arrive, God willing. We have transformative moments. We get to the promised land, and then we do something stupid, and we're back in Egypt. Right? Then we're like, yeah, I'm really good at work. Right? And I was teaching a man, and I was there, and I was present. And then we come home, and our kid wants to play with us, and we're like, I'm too tired. Get out of my face. Right? It's like, oh, back in Egypt. Right? And so it's it's not that we're bad because we did that. We're human. So we have to then breathe into it and go, okay, wait a minute. Where do I want to be? Do I want to be in Mitzrayim in the narrow places, or do I want to be at least striving for the promised land? Right? And so for me, Kai, when you were talking about this idea of we're invited to interpret, right? We're invited. I think I feel that way. I love how you described it, that God loves us so much that the text becomes an invitation. It's not completely done and finished. It's an invitation to dive in and to study and to learn, right? And so anyway, that's my approach. It's about this transitionary nature. I mean, I'll just finish on this one thing. Sorry, you got me going now. About Adam and Eve. So I had a classmate of mine whose dad was a rabbi, brilliant rabbi and professor and writer. And we were in Jerusalem, and he was telling the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, obviously, we were 25 years old, 26, 28, whatever we were, and we knew the story, right? We'd heard the story before. We were rabbis. We were rabbinic students for all. And he reframed this story, and he said, when God says to Adam and Eve, hey, that's that tree right there. That tree, don't eat from that tree. And then God walked them through and gave them a tour, right, of garden. And then God says, hey, by the way, that tree over there, whatever you do, don't eat from it. And then God continues, hey, remember that tree? Whatever you do, don't eat. It's like God seems to be going, why did God point out that tree? It seems like they wouldn't have even known it was the right tree. But it's almost as if God's inviting them to eat from the fruit because they're not going to become the human beings that they need to become if they're living and existing in this pure environment where they can't make a bad decision.
Wow.
So any good decision is only worth something if you could have made a bad one.
Wow.
It was necessary.
Absolutely.
So we stop blaming Eve.
Yes, please stop blaming Eve. Eve knew better. Eve was like,
Wow. That's a whole new sermon.
See, we're trying to stay focused.
Wait, I have to add one other thing. I'm sorry.
Yes, please. Yes.
In the Hebrew, when God says it is not good for Adam to be alone, and then it says that God will make a fitting partner, I think is how it's often translated. But that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says, Ezer kenegdo, which means, Ezer means help, a helpmate. But here's the best part. Kenegdo, against him.
Wow.
A helper against him.
Wow.
Now, as a feminist rabbi, as one who believes in turning gender and turning the text upside down, I don't believe it's just about women being an Ezer Kenegdo for the man. I think it's both ways. If we're going to have a meaningful partnership, then we have to have a strong partner who is willing to love us and also call us on the mat.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, Tracy, you'll meet Natalie on Sunday. I definitely married one of those.
I'm excited. I'm excited to meet Natalie. And can I, before Pastor Johnson jumps in, because I know he's got 25 cents to
Yeah, I
add
was
here
going to
too.
take another solo, but jump
No,
in. You go
okay,
first. You go first.
okay. But, okay, so I've, of course, heard this story of Jacob and Esau many, many times. But just today, I have this inkling in my spirit that maybe Jacob has gotten a bad rep. Maybe he was not grabbing onto the heel of Esau so that he could be firstborn, but maybe he was trying to pull his brother back to the darkness that he recognized. Like, don't go. Don't leave me, brother. We know this place. This place, we are safe together. We know each other. We can help each other here. But now you are leaving me. Where are you going? I feel like he was trying to hold on to his brother's heel so he could pull him back. And once he came out and everybody was saying, oh, he was trying to be first, then he just lived into what people told him he was. But that's not necessarily who he was. So I just wanted to throw that in there before I forget and before Pastor Johnson starts preaching.
That's beautiful.
Well, I just have to say that is amazing, Tracy. Wow. But Rabbi, okay, you have to go back for me to, I have never heard the Hebrew translated the way you did related to the helpmeet concept. I've heard fitting partner many times, but I never heard the helpmate against him.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to unpack that for me.
Yolanda, would you put that in comments, please? Would you?
Please,
put that
you
in
gotta unpack that more.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. Please.
Which is right at the heart of this whole concept of how we understand relationships. Shauna, thank Dr. Pacheco. Thank you.
So I'm writing it into the chat. So Ezer comes from the Hebrew word ozer, which means help. So if I were to say I'm helping you, I'd say ani ozer, I'm helping. Okay. And Hebrew works with roots. That's a really important piece to understand, is that there's generally every Hebrew word has a 3-letter root. And that word, so Ezer is one version, Ozer, Ezra. You can hear the same consonantal sounds, but in different versions, right? So anyway, Ezer is means, as I said, means help. And then in the word kenegdo negdo is the word neged. So if you were in Israel and you were at a political rally, there'd be people who were neged, against some, whatever policy. Okay. So that's neged. K is the prefix, which means as or like. So it's a helpmate like against him, right? And then O is the suffix, the masculine singular objective pronoun, right? So as their helpmate against him is it's a clumsy phrasing and it's a clumsy translation, but it can't mean anything but some version of that our partner has got to be both one who loves us unconditionally as well as is willing to say when we're wrong.
That is amazing.
I need it on a t-shirt.
That is amazing. It's the exact same teaching of Gary Zukav, who wrote Seed of the Soul, where he talks about the concept of spiritual partnership rather than marriage. And spiritual partnership is exactly that. It's the concept that says, I am not going to sit in the boat with you. I'm going to get out of the boat and figure out what's rocking the boat with you and try and unpack it. Figure out why you're experiencing the problems that you're creating for yourself and call you on those issues so that we can both thrive. And so we become almost like this idea of having someone who is looking out for our best interest, of course, and living with us and thriving with us and encouraging us. But then at the same time, being in a position where I'm your accountability partner as well. And I'm putting you in a position where I'm not going to allow you to get away with those things that make you comfortable if I know that they're not good for you. I'm going to call you on them. And so there's this tension that usually sits inside of a great partnership like that, but it's a welcomed tension. And I've never, ever been able to understand that particular concept inside of the creation story. Because then it's in my head, it's always been framed as part of this patriarchal kind of thing, where the male is the one who needed the helper. And so therefore we are those, the female is the one who is oppressed underneath the power and authority of the male. But there cannot be power and authority and oppression inside of the kingdom of God. So that's where that confusion for me has come. And you've just totally unpacked that for me. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
I'm speechless, but I'm not.
There was a
You got it.
question that popped up. Was there a question?
I got it.
Oh,
But as you're reading, I still need it on a t-shirt. And I just want to say that I do my job very well.
you're good. You're good as a connecto, huh? Should I explain everything?
I just
Wow.
want to say too, my husband
Yeah.
is a very, very strong South African man.
Mm.
And so he came looking for me. And I don't think he realized how uncomfortable he would be once he met me, because we share this strength, and so there's just been, Pastor Yolanda, this dance that you do where you're trying to figure out how to love one another, but at the same time, hold one another accountable.
Accountability partner.
Inside of a Christian concept that tells you that that's not necessarily your role as the female entity of the marriage. And that's where things have always been, in my opinion, so confusing for the female entity of Christian marriages, where we're told that our job is to serve and submit. And the more I learn about God and the way he created us and this unity that he created us in, and Rabbi, you said it so beautifully, this distinctive unity. There can't be unity without distinction. That is beautiful. This unified distinction that we live inside of. But at the same time, this myth of this concept where we're supposed to live underneath this oppressive kind of confine because we're female in the relationship, to me, that's a complete contradiction of God's creativity. And so therefore, what this illustrates is God's creativity. This idea that we're supposed to be in this partnership where we're continuously showing love one to another, but we're also opposing those things that would bring us into a place of oppression one to another as well, where we're oppressed under the narrow way. We're oppressed under narrowness. And so we're supposed to see that for one another and aid each other in allowing ourselves to be in a place where we're continuously thriving. That is just, I am blessed. Thank you.
Amen.
It's rich. It's rich.
I have one other teaching that I have to share with you.
Yes.
That's about this story, because it is one that I think has plagued human beings for centuries. What does the Torah say? What does the Bible say about what God uses to make Eve? I'm asking, what?
Oh, the rib.
Translation.
The rib, right?
It depends on the rib.
Right,
Depends on
the rib, right?
It's really a part, right?
It's
Where
a
he removed a part.
It's a half.
A half, yes.
So
Yes, not the rib.
It wasn't a rib. I don't know who mistranslated that Can you imagine what the history of men and women might be without that? The Hebrew says that God takes from Adam tzelatav. It actually means a side. And so the only other place in the Torah where that word comes from is when you're talking about two equal sides of a building. Like there's one tzela and another tzela. And so the tradition teaches that God just takes half of Adam to make Eve. Right? I mean, that's what the text says, right? You know, that's how you translate it, right? There's all sorts of other words you can use for the word rib, right? It doesn't mean rib. It never meant rib. So it's really just like, it's like in the text itself, like God's making it clear you are halves of a whole, which makes you equal from the get-go.
Rabbi, let me tell you something. You are crushing some Christian folks' philosophy and theology right now.
I'm sorry.
This level of truth, this level of translation of the actual Hebrew is beautiful, because this patriarchy that sits on the inside of the Christian church comes directly. It sits on the inside of this American concept, which we all know that this American concept of the church was used to completely oppress many. And inside of that oppression were also women, even white women who were a part of the settlers of the United States were also oppressed underneath these erroneous teachings of the Bible. So what you're doing right now, I mean, you're messing up a whole lot of folks' night, and it's beautiful.
I need another T-shirt that says half.
Half.
Not
Half.
half.
Please, this is beautiful. Please go on. Give us more.
And
I want to give some practical application to that. I do want to say that I hope a bunch of single folks are watching, who are single, who want to get married. Not all single folks want to get married, but for those who desire to get married, as you're searching for a life mate, that this is so helpful, that you shouldn't be looking just for someone who's just like you or who agrees with you, but someone who is your help, someone who is for against you. I like the way, Rabbi, the person who is for against you. So there's someone who's for you, but someone who's against you to the point that they are going to speak truth and hold you accountable when necessary. And I just one more note about that. Tracy Jan and I were having a conversation this week, Rabbi and Shauna Kai, about courage and about why we keep saying that you got to have courage to have these tough conversations about race. But what if and Tracy, this hits on what you were saying. When we keep saying it, talking about it that way, that makes it painful even before it becomes painful. But what if we saw ourselves as, I am for against you. I am for against. I'm here to engage in a conversation so that I can be for against you. I can be a helpmate who I love you. I'm here to support you. And if necessary, that means that at times I will oppose you, but it's for the sake of helping you. So I just want to throw that in. Yeah. Tracy,
we cannot effectively love people who we don't feel like we can protect. So like when we are with our children, for instance.
Say that again. That was good.
We can't effectively love people who we don't feel like we can protect. Like part of loving people is wanting them to be safe, wanting them to be secure. And we can't secure people who we can't instruct when they are wrong, right? So that's why we pull our children back out of the street. That is why we correct them when they've done something wrong. And that kind of love, that love of a parent to a child, surpasses so many other kinds of love, right? And we can see what we understand as unconditional love modeled in those relationships between parents and children, right? I need you to be safe and I need you to be okay. So in order for me to keep you safe and okay, I need to tell you when something is wrong. And if we continue that into all of our other relationships, then we can actively, unconditionally love one another. But if I'm in a relationship with you and I cannot tell you that you are wrong, I cannot tell you that you're in harm's way, that you are unsafe right now because of the way you are living, then I cannot love you.
Right.
Come through. Come through.
Ability for what you do and what you experience is love. Opposition, when given in the right way, when vetted in the right way and presented in the right way, is love. It's the absence of accountability. It's the absence of responsibility that makes us not love, that makes us be unchristian.
Wow. That was
Well,
rich,
thank you.
young man. That was rich. That was rich.
I don't
That
know why you sound surprised, Robert Johnson. You brought the man here to say rich things. He said something rich.
I did. I mean, I did, but I didn't know he was gonna go like that. He's making me look bad because people are gonna be like, how is he already that deep? And Pastor Johnson is 55. He ain't never said anything. Like, we need to revisit this whole pastoral search thing and do something different. That was so good, Quante. Yes.
Karen Zeller-Sevier says, wow.
Exactly. That was a wow. Yes. Yes. Samari, Samari, you don't have to jump in. She'll talk when she's ready. That's right. There you go. Rabbi, we want to circle back because you were adding on more.
Where to begin? What was I about to say? There was a question that came up from someone, I guess there it is. So this is what's interesting for me is that, to a certain extent, there's, as a Jew, as a rabbi, I have a certain set of understanding and theology that sort of moves me in a certain direction. And so I think this is, let me just say, I'll try to respond to the questions, but I certainly don't think I'm going to be able to do it necessarily within a Christian theological understanding. But I think his question is really interesting, right? Does the Hebrew story of Adam and Eve articulate when their eyes were opened after they disobeyed God? So first of all, it does. I mean, that's one of the first things it says, right? Was that when they eat the fruit, what does it say? It says that they knew they were naked. Right? So they had this, and again, I tell people all the time when I teach, like, don't read the Torah like you're reading a regular book. Like, read the Torah like you're reading poetry, right? It's metaphor, it's analogy, it's simile, it's not journalism, right? It's not like you're, reading the New York Times or something, right? Read it like metaphor. So what does it mean when they discover that they're naked, right? Well, it's a metaphor for self-awareness. It's like babies will run around a house naked. They don't care. But at some point, I don't know, when they're 2.5, 3, whatever, they begin to notice, oh, other people are wearing clothes. But it's this idea of self-awareness. And then, in addition, does the Hebrew story explain how, after they gained the knowledge of good and evil, why didn't they simply repent? I think it's an incredibly great question, because sometimes you have to look at the story of Adam and Eve and go, this was not fair. Like, you're telling me that they got, thrown out of the garden because they ate from the fruit and they were warned not to eat. But, like, can you imagine telling a 1.5-year-old baby who, I don't know, put their hand in a cake, and the babysitter says, well, I told her not to. it's like, well, but that's sort of like that, right? But then what goes beyond that, what I love is there's this it says that God is walking through the garden, right? And I talked about the rustling of leaves as God moves through the garden, and then God calls out to Adam and says, and then the Hebrew word is ayeka, 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 which means, in Hebrew, it means, where are you? Now, we're talking about God here. God did not lose Adam and Eve, right? God doesn't not know where they are, right? The question is a spiritual one, right? The question is, where are you in terms of relationship with me, right? Where are you in terms of relationship with the world around you, right? This story is meant not to be about Adam and Eve and how they just got thrown out. It's meant for each of us, every human being ever reading it since, to hear that story and remember moments when they acted in ways that they were told not to. And then, or in that moment, maybe they have done something, or maybe they're just feeling as, I think one of you talked about the idea of just being isolated from yourself, right? And that question, where are you, is a spiritual, where are you? Where are you in this moment, right? Where are you? And then it talks about, and what do? They try to cover themselves. What do? They hide, right? In those moments, we hide out of fear, right? And then I think Pastor Johnson, you were talking about courage, right? Courage is that thing that allows us to step out from behind the tree in all of our vulnerabilities. It's like a Shauna. Shauna? Is that your name, Shauna?
Yeah.
Yeah. In this patriarchal world, you're right. Men need to learn to shut up and listen a hell of a lot more, a heck of a lot more, right? But it's not their fault to a certain extent. I mean, it's what the society has said. You are supposed to be strong and powerful and right all the time. And so it's not every man who can hear his partner telling him he's wrong and be able to say, oh, let me think about that. But it's built into the fabric from the beginning. It's what God tells us. Like, you got to tamp down your ego. You got to be able to go, okay, it's possible that I don't know everything. And I am not less of a human being if I'm wrong.
Don't.
And so you got to be able to ask the question, Ayeka, where are you? But you can't do that if you don't shut up, right? And the last thing I'll say is, it was one of my favorite things teaching I ever had was that God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth, so we should be listening twice as much as we talk. Right? And
Yeah.
I don't mean to just pile it on men, because there are plenty of women yeah, absolutely. And you got to be there's a lot of women who are very comfortable with the Ezra Kenegdo piece, right? But if it's turned the other direction, and your husband, your boyfriend, your man is saying, honey, I think you didn't get this right. It's not every woman who's going to be open to that. I mean, automatically, right? But that's what it's about. That's what it's for. It's about partnership and openness, and our world would be a much better place. Oh, and the reason why, the primary reason why white supremacy is so wrong is because there's no room for anybody else's opinion. I mean, it's wrong for so many reasons, but the primary thing is you're wrong because you cannot always be right.
Right.
Just by definition. It's just read the Torah.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
If I could
Yes,
jump
sir.
in.
Yes, Kai, please. Yes, sir.
Yes, again, so much stuff was said.
So much stuff. Yeah.
I appreciate, number one, he said when you're reading the Torah, you read it as poetry. We kind of had this discussion a little bit last week. We were talking about art and kind of having a mindset on how you absorb this and all the meaning and everything that's in it. So for everybody that's listening, that's such a huge reminder to us that when we read the word, there's a lot of different literary genres wrapped into the Bible, and we we do ourselves and we do the word a disservice when we don't understand some of that. And again, that goes to that point earlier, because the one I'm stuck on is still that idea of the improvisation that's built into this whole experience, loving one another, living that out. Just like the rabbi said, he said, there are some cases where it might be the man that doesn't want to listen. It might be the woman that doesn't want to listen. But the spirits or the natures behind our relationships, they are what they are. But that improv space is what I'm going to call it. Whether you're in a narrow space, you're in a wide space, that's what that's your learning experience. That's your environment to interact with one another, to figure out what loving your neighbor looks like. Oh, loving my neighbor looks like shutting up right now. Loving my neighbor means saying, you know what, I'm wrong, right? And so again, our whole life with Christ is this beautiful. It's really this beautiful improvisation that we're living out, where we're learning more. And it's like more props are coming into our scene that we get to act out and use to develop richer and richer relationships. Just thank you so much for tonight, sir. You've just really blessed me. So I'm beyond grateful. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's been great. So it's 8:23. I want to be done by 8:30. So let's move towards a close. So what I like to invite Rabbi Scott to do, the blessing in Numbers, in the Torah, in Numbers. Will you when we get to can you close us with that, and then I'll play Karen Zeller Sevier, who's a good friend of mine, lives in Houston, beautiful voice. There's a song that she does it's a blessing. She sings the blessing over us. And so I'm going to ask Rabbi Scott to chant. Can you do the chant of it? And then
I'd be honored.
Then we'll do Karen's song. That's how we'll end. So make sure you stay on. Just a couple of announcements. Again, you've heard Rabbi Scott tonight. You've heard Tracy J. You've heard Dr. Sean. I'm hoping Dr. Sean will be able to join us on Sunday at 3 p.m. I don't know if she'll be able to. Kai Green, Pastor London, I hope to be on, but we'll be in the 100 Voices conversation. And everyone will get a chance to talk, because again, Tracy's going to break us off into rooms, and every person will get a chance to engage and to share without judgment, but teaching people, engaging people in the beautiful work of sharing your humanity. And so, St. Mark, we've been invited into this. I'm looking so forward to it. Make sure you go to my Facebook profile. If you're on the leadership team, you got an email with the link in it. Go in, get registered so you can receive the Zoom link, and let's get ready for an amazing time. I also want to share with you all that on tomorrow night that I'll be participating in this, the Black Church and Mental Wellness. That's a part of healthy relationships and being healthy people. As a matter of fact, that connects with our conversation tonight. And Aika, is that right? Aika? Ayaka.
Coming soon.
Let's get it right. Dr. Shauna knows that I'll by the time we finish, it won't even sound like the same word. It'll be like spelled differently, sound different. And so where are you? And yes. And I do want to say that if we get, there's so much that was said tonight. And I pray that you were taking notes, because there was so much that was said tonight, not only by Rabbi, but the feedback from everyone. So one of the things that I know that I'm taking with me is is this thing of being the helpmate, the helper, and that part that's listening, and that you are not always right. And so I think that's a healthy way to walk away from this, whether in our marriages, in our relationship with our children. For parents, you are not always right. In our church faith communities, in our business work, taking that with us and learning, being willing to engage in relationships in a different way, and being willing to be both for against. That is such a great paradigm. That is such a great model that for every person that I'm engaged with, that I'm relating to, that I want to be for or against. And then just one quick final note that I love, and Kyron keeps picking up on it. Kai keeps picking up on it. The riffing on scripture. That scripture is God's invitation for us. It's not but an invitation to engage in a conversation. It's an invitation to riff, to engage with not just the oneness, but to engage with each other in a conversation. And I just love that. And I think we can take that with us. And then, of course, there are many, many other things. Thank you all for participating. Tracy J, would you like to say anything else regarding 100 Voices?
Well, before I say something about 100 Voices, I just want to say for the record that we did not get to point number 2 today. I did not feel like we would, but I just want to say we did not get there. I'm fine with it. And I forgive you, which is point number 2. I forgive you for not getting to point number 2. But I just want to, tonight has been amazing. I'm looking forward to being with you all again on Sunday. I can't read that. Oh, put your 7s down. Put your 7 down. We're not talking about that right now. Sunday at 3:00, 100 Voices. I believe that, I believe that this is the work that I was born to do. And I am grateful to be able to do it with people who are friends and family. And for each of us to broaden the depth and scope of how we view humanity in one another. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be great. So Quante and Samari, thank you all so much. And I know we old heads dominated the conversation, but we so appreciate you all joining us. And if y'all keep coming on, we want to give more voice to you guys, and especially as we talk more about relationships. So let's close.
Great.
Yes.
Samaria graduates this week.
Congratulations. So proud of you. By the way, to all of our graduates, thank you so much, Pastor Yolanda. I do want to announce that on Sunday, June 6th, during our 10 a.m. worship, we will celebrate our graduates, followed by a reception. So if you are a graduate of St. Mark, or if you're a graduate in the community, you would like to be a part of our celebration, please call the church or send an email to Shawan Jackson here at the church. Give her your information so we can put you on the list. By the way, we're planning that we will give scholarships to every graduate as you go off. And if you're not going off, if you're graduating from college, you still get a reward, but we're giving scholarships to everyone. That's been outlined. So if you're a person from St. Mark, make sure you get signed up to participate in our graduate celebration. All right. So Rabbi, if you'll do the blessing for us, and then we'll play Karen's video. Thank all of you all for coming on. Y'all hang on. You don't want to miss these closing blessings.
So this is from the book of Numbers, and it's called the priestly benediction. And I invite you to close your eyes if you would like, and just receive the blessing that flows through these words. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'asem lecha shalom. May God lift God's face to you and grant you the greatest gift of all, peace in a world of peace.
Wow. All right, folks. And here's our final gift to you tonight.
Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 Everybody say amen. 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 The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 So sing together. Amen. Amen. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. Amen. 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 Everybody say amen. 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 May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming, in your going, in your weeping, your rejoicing. God is for you. God is for you. He is for you. He is for you. Yeah. All together say, amen. 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 Everybody say amen. 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 keep you, make his face shine upon you, and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward